Good evening and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. First up, the agenda brief. Viewers, we start with Donald Trump's announcement of 25% tariff plus a penalty on India starting August 1st. A massive political fight has broken out in India where opposition says the country is paying because of Modi's friendship. Government has, of course, remained confident of striking a balanced deal soon and has issued a statement to that effect. Next up, we'll be decoding why Trump chose to ignore such a high base tariff on India, or impose rather such a high base tariff on India, especially when compared to the likes of UK, EU and other countries. Is it because India is close to Russia and continues to purchase oil and arms? Is Trump trying to arm twist India into sweetening the eventual deal? Viewers, despite weeks and months of ongoing talks between US and India on the trade negotiations, President Donald Trump today dropped a bombshell, announcing 25% tariff on India starting August 1st. Even as he called India a friend, Trump bemoaned the high taxes that Bharat imposes, terming them one of the highest in the world. The US President also threatened a penalty on India for buying oil and arms from Russia. Soon after Trump's announcement, the center issued a statement saying that it's analyzing the impact of his decision. The Modi government, however, made it clear that it will protect and promote the welfare of farmers, entrepreneurs and MSMEs. Commerce Ministry also reiterated that India intends to take steps that will secure our national interest. Now, Trump's tariff on India has sparked a political war back home. The India bloc, led by the Congress party, has lashed out at Prime Minister Modi, saying this is the consequence of his so-called friendship with President Trump. The BJP has also expressed disappointment with US's announcement, but is confident that India will strike a full-fledged trade deal with US sooner rather than later.
ये तो प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को और भारत को एक बहुत बड़ा धक्का है। तारीफ ही तारीफ में टैरिफ लग गया। हाउडी मोदी, नमस्ते ट्रंप, इसका कोई फायदा नहीं। तो हमारे लिए, हमारे देश के लिए, हमारे अर्थव्यवस्था के लिए, प्रधानमंत्री के लिए ये बहुत बहुत बड़ा धक्का है।
ये सवाल प्रधानमंत्री जी से कीजिए। हम अंधेरे में हैं, लेकिन उनके साथ इस देश के मिजाज के साथ कोई समझौता नहीं होना चाहिए। आज जो सरकार में है, कल नहीं होंगे, लेकिन ये महासागर की चरित्र वाला देश है। इसको कोई गदला करने की कोशिश करे, ये बढ़ना।
It is very unfortunate, but certainly it needs a total study as to how it will impact India, and certainly the government of India will take cognizance of this issue.
Let's take this across to Rishabh, who's joining us. Rishabh, the government has put out a statement saying that they hope that the negotiations will yield some kind of result soon and the government will take steps to secure our national interest. The big question is that how soon that will happen and whether this is really a bargaining tactic at the end of the day, because what is quite surprising is that Trump has chosen to link all of this with India buying arms and oil from Russia. Now, how does that work in the context of India also being a quad partner of the US?
Well, if we talk about this, Madhav, what the logic that is being given by US President on this 25% tariff, that India is banking heavily on equipment purchases from Russia. If we talk about equipment, defense equipment purchases, before 2009-2010 fiscal year, India was purchasing about 56% of its defense products from Russia. That has come down to 36% in 2024-25, and most of these, the equipments or the platforms that we are using now that used to be Russian has been replaced by either indigenously made manufactured equipments or platforms, or few which have been purchased from Europe as well as US as well. Remember, just last week 3 Apache helicopters has come to India as well.
Yes,
and these are removing the Mi-35s of Russian.
Well, absolutely, and the United States will have to appreciate that there is a historical context to this. India has traditionally traditionally acquired a lot of arms and ammunition from Russia. And if that has to change, it will be a very slow process and at India's terms and not vice versa or any other way. Thanks so much for joining us, Rishabh, on that. Let's quickly now take this across to Mr. Surjit Bhalla, who's a former executive director of the IMF for India, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Sri Lanka, who's joining us. Mr. Surjit Bhalla, thanks so much for joining us. What's your assessment of Donald Trump's announcement imposing a 25% tariff on Indian goods, particularly the so-called penalty, quote-unquote, for India's continued energy and defense ties with Russia? How significant is the economic impact on India potentially?
Well, first, the Trump announcement of a tariff deal. I think we as in India and the Indian negotiations, should look at it as to whether Trump is saying anything that Indians themselves have not been saying for at least a decade, if not more, and that is that our tariff rates are harmful to our interests, are the highest in the world, which is exactly what Mr. Trump is saying. So Indians have been saying that. So the fact that Trump is saying that doesn't give him any more gravitas. We ourselves believe we have the highest. Now, Indians, we have been negotiating for the last several months, and we are still at the same place as we were 5 months ago. So I think we should look at this as an opportunity for India, and this is what I've been stating all along, that it's an opportunity for India to do best for its own people, and that is to reduce tariffs on Indian goods and exports.
Okay, but we've seen in the past many times over that Trump has backtracked on similar tariff threats. He's, of course, later called for a trade truce. In your view, is this just another bargaining tactic, or should we take him more seriously this time around?
Look, the negotiations have been with China and Europe and other countries, strong countries in a strong position. And we've seen that with Europe, he's got mostly what he wanted. So in other words, maybe the fundamentals are in his favor, and therefore we should recognize that. Now, India's not in a very strong negotiation position. And even if it were, as I said, it is in our interest to reduce the tariffs. So I think that is what everybody sees. And whether you're an American or you're an Indian, you see that fact. And therefore, I think it is in our best interest to de-escalate and negotiate for lower tariffs on India.
And is there a chance, in your view, that this tariff grandstanding has anything to do with the categorical stand taken by the Indian government against Trump's claims of facilitating the ceasefire between India and Pakistan just yesterday?
Look, I think that's a red herring. The trade deal was going on much before the India-Pakistan conflict. And I think, to attribute any aspect of the trade deal to Trump's involvement in a ceasefire or not involvement is really not very useful or not very productive or not very relevant. We should have a trade deal with the U.S., as I and many others in India have argued, because it's in our best interest to have a trade deal. I even said in a column about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, that, this could be India's 1991 moment.
All right.
We could really boost growth in India by reducing tariffs. And we seem to be doing nothing of the sort. So therefore, I am a bit, more than a bit disappointed in India's negotiating strategy and results. And therefore, I am saying, in our best interest, please negotiate a tariff deal which helps Indians which helps Indian manufacturers, which helps Indian farmers, which helps Indian production. And it doesn't, let me conclude by saying that, look, I don't see any difference in the trade deal announced by the now being negotiated by the BJP and the trade deals being negotiated by previous governments in India. So what has changed? We thought things had changed. We thought there will be some kind of movement forward on reforms, on tariff reforms, but nothing of the sort seems to have happened.
All right, Surjit Bhalla, thanks so much for joining us and breaking this down with your views. Let's quickly open this across to our guest now. Joining us is Deepak Reddy, national spokesperson of the TDP. With us also is Tehseen Poonawalla, political analyst. Advocate Anmol Pawar is the national spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party. Let me begin with you. First, Tehseen, the question that the government has come out to say is that we will take all steps necessary to secure our national interest, as has been the case with other trade agreements, including the latest CETA, or the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement with the UK. We've seen other trade agreements that have been announced more recently. Why would the opposition doubt that that's not been possible in the case of United States? Negotiations are still underway. Tehseen.
The art of nothingness is exactly in that statement that you read out from the government. Exactly what does that statement mean? We will do everything to secure India. You're the government of India. That is your goddamn duty. The gentleman you interviewed before me, Surjit Bhalla, one of the most eminent economists of our nation, and therefore Times Now interviewed him, was one of the biggest cheer supporters for Prime Minister Modi and the BJP. Today he says, and I quote him, that he's disappointed this trade agreement, the government of India has not moved anything forward in 5 months. That's him verbatim on your show. That's how badly they feel, and we've been telling these people. Can I just draw you back to 2008, the nuclear deal, and how India dealt with the US? We got a 1-2-3 agreement without being signatories to the NSG. We got an exception for India. And it's not just Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, Prime Minister Vajpayee, everybody from an area of strength have dealt with the United States.
But what happened after that? Look, what happened after the nuclear deal?
After that, the BJP got cash in parliament. I don't want to make this parliament.
No, please.
They tried to destabilize it.
2008 to 2014, the Congress was very much in power. We all remember the Chai Pe Charcha in Hyderabad House, and what happened? The nuclear deal is a great symbol of the two countries coming together. Nothing actually happened on ground until a recent visit where small nuclear reactors were activated.
I don't want to go on a nuclear deal, but are you saying India didn't get an exception? Are you saying India is not a nuclear
but what was the concrete outcome of that? As far as nuclear plants on ground? A nuclear deal that does not deliver nuclear propaganda.
Those are because the BJP's fake propaganda, which the BJP's turn around. But can we come to the economic? Because
this is not propaganda. Come on. This is when you do a deal, Tehseen, it is not just for bringing the two countries' ties together. It's for gaining something concrete on ground.
And who was the one?
I'm merely asking you about if you feel that is a landmark moment, and this is something that is a great achievement diplomatically, and kudos to the then government. What came out of it finally?
Okay, now let me answer that question before I actually come on the question. We got, after that, 3 more nuclear plants that we've sanctioned. They have come from Japan. The earlier ones were coming from France. We got Japan. And Japan, which was one of the biggest opposers to us having nuclear technology, came on board. This despite us not being signatory to the 1-2-3 agreement. You may please check me. So yes, we didn't get an agreement with US. The 1-2-3 agreement opened the way for us to get nuclear energy from Japan and the technology from Japan. And Japan since then has been, and Japan since then, please, but just may I finish? And Japan since then has been one of our strongest allies. In fact, the formation of Quad happened between the then ex-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who is no more between us, and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. The idea of Quad was formed. Now let me come to the trade deal. Look at the United States of America. You rightly said that there have been trade breaks that they have taken with China, but they have an interim deal, and now till August 12th it's been pushed with China. They've worked something out with China. With Europe, which is completely developed, they've got a deal which is much better than us, 15%, and they're putting 25% on us. Europe is there any dispute? Europe is more developed. They've got 15% for Europe. Look at how they've managed. Others have managed to deal with President Trump, and therefore I said, don't be submissive before President Trump. President Trump likes to deal with alphas. You have to be powerful.
Okay. Let's go point by point. Rajat is also joining us on the panel now. Let's go to each of you one by one. Rajat, 2 points I think that Tehseen makes are important for us to debate. One, He says, look at the concession that EU has managed to get. They drove a hard bargain and they have managed to get 15%, which for a developed country, unlike which India is still in the developing stage, at some level or the other, 25% tariff is something that there's a lot of concern about at this point of time. We don't know if it's a bargaining tactic, but certainly going by the statements, this does generate a lot of concern. And point number two, have we given up or conceded too much too early? Because we did allow, for instance, bourbon, whiskey and motorcycles and so on in several categories that we agreed to US's terms. But that has not softened the deal for us, has it? Rajat.
So Madhav, I was hearing what Tehseen was saying, and it is true. We haven't, gone in with a begging bowl before the US. We have stood on our grounds that certain core interests of India, be it our MSMEs or be it our farming community, has to be protected at whatever cost it comes. It is a matter which has stalled the conversations or the negotiations which are happening. Then so be it. If the 25% tariff that is announced, first of all, I don't feel that 25% is too out of the blue. This is much lower than what others are going to get on the 1st of August deadline. That way, if you look at, yes, Europe was able to negotiate out a no tariff regime and still got a base tariff of 15% from the US. These are not rational discussions happening at all. So you cannot apply a rationalist logical frame of thinking when it comes to Donald Trump. And I believe that the 1st of August spectacle that he wants in for this domestic audience, that is something which is bearing on his mind. He has those letters printed out, which he has to distribute to several countries over the next 24 hours. So not just India, several of these countries will get these. And let us wait out. I mean, it's not like we have burnt out all the bridges with US. The US convergence with India's relationship will happen no matter what. Trump will come and Trump will go, but the convergence between the two countries will continue. And I also believe that over the next few months, our Commerce Ministry will continue to see if there can be a common ground between the two nations or not. Otherwise, this tariff is a tax on the American people. This $300 billion that US has been able to mop up through tariffs, where is it coming from? It is not coming from India or China. It is coming from the pockets of an average US consumer.
I think one point, Tehseen, you have to answer. And the point is this. If India has been steadfast that there will be absolutely no impact as far as the agriculture sector is concerned, as far as its dairy sector is concerned, which apart from protecting the farmers and dairy farmers, there's also a crucial sentiment because, dairy products there, the cows there are fed certain non-vegetarian items and certain things that we've been told. And that's something that's not going to go down well with a huge cross-section of the Indian public, whether we like it or not. So India's job is to safeguard whatever interests and sentiments exist there in India.
I'm glad we're talking about sentiments. I'm a person of sentiments, but I'm also a person of numbers. So let me give what Rajat said. What are the numbers? This will barely affect us. Just the impact on India's trade with Russia on crude oil. I'm not even going to other issues. Just a bare increase of 0.5% hurts our GDP by 0.2%. Now our IT sector, which is about $250 billion export, gets hurt by about 10%. That's another $10 billion. Our other exports to the US, that does not include IT, is another $15 billion. This is real money that is affecting India. I do think we should negotiate. But before negotiating, you put your arms down. You say, okay, let your whiskeys come in, let your motorcycles come in. But hey, now we're going to be ending up losing real-time money. Somebody has to be responsible and accountable for it. And the only answer that I've heard from everyone from the BJP or wise men like Rajat, who I really respect, is, oh, but sentiments cannot get hurt. But sentiments and real money are two real things. Can I please?
No, you're looking at it from one way. I've addressed that question. I'm just saying, why don't we look at from the point of us blocking their GM food? Something which is such a sensitive issue here. Why are you not considering that?
May I just make one more point? Now, let's before we come to the GM food, let me make one more point. When there were sanctions put on Iran, when the previous government was there, we got an exception for Iran. Under this government, we gave up those exceptions. Now we've lost. Now President Trump is threatening us with our oil import from Russia, for our crude from Russia, which is 44% this time of our imports. This cannot be that we give up Iran, who's been our ally for about hundreds of years, and now we even have to suffer with Russia. Okay, there is no fair. And quick response from Rajat. Our farmers should not get hurt with GM food.
Okay, I agree with you. Quick response from Rajat.
Protect our farmers.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was making earlier. But Rajat, quick response on the Iran point, and then I go across to others.
See, even with Iran and what India has been doing with Iran, we were able to explain to the American counterparts why it is important as a hedge Otherwise, you cannot allow such important straits and access to the oil routes to go into Chinese hands if the Chabahar ports go in and China gets a unilateral position on Chabahar port after having control over Gwadar port. So these finer details have to be explained in those bilateral discussions which have happened in the past. I believe that, how Trump and the current White House is thinking on two different trajectories which are not intermixing. One trajectory is his obsession on tariff, which is going on a parallel realm. And then there are these nuances which his team understands. And I believe India has been able to create that favorable environment within that White House team. And this is the reason why we were able to even get a ban on TRF. How does that happen otherwise? With an Asim Munir sitting in over lunch with President Trump. So my point is that both these two tracks are happening parallelly with our relationship with the US. We shouldn't worry too much on what is the public spectacle around tariffs. There is far more nuances which are going on the other track, and we should be more.
Let others come in now. Let others come in now. Once again, please don't let others come in. They have not yet spoken. Give them a chance also. Advocate Anmol Pawar, I want you to come in on this. The point is this, that while of course India has every right to negotiate and is going to perhaps negotiate further, it's not just India. There are other countries which are seen as being very close to the United States, including Korea, including Japan, which have also been charged this fairly high rate of about 26%. So this could very well be just a bargaining tactic on part of the United States, and we've seen President Trump do this in the past. Are we overreacting at the moment?
Madhav G, Donald Trump is mocking and insulting India every day, and this imposition of 25% tariffs on Indian goods by the US president, it's not just an economic blow, but a diplomatic insult rolled into one. And we can't afford silence. India can't afford silence. It's time to stand up to Trump's economic and diplomatic insult. Let us not forget that it was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who hugged Donald Trump, called him a true friend of India, and orchestrated mega events like Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump. But what did we receive in return? A devastating 25% tariffs on Indian goods, or threats of further sanctions and penalties, or a ceasefire under Trump's pressure, or our Indians being handcuffed and treated like criminals? We only received humiliation and global embarrassment. And it's not just about trade, it's about the dignity of our country on global stage. But the problem is that the BJP government is more concerned about photo ops than policy outcomes. They have reduced diplomacy into an event management, slogans and selfie events. So that's the problem. Sarkar ko dhyan dena chahiye कि the agriculture sector, which is lifeline of our country, their interest must be secured. And our Prime Minister must give a strong response to this move of the United States.
Let me bring in Deepak Reddy on 2 points. The government has to answer. Certainly, the government has put out a statement. What it will do, of course, it will have to answer to the opposition and the people of the country. That is a given. But Deepak Reddy, there is one point. The one point that is quite startling is that in the case of India, President Trump is talking about a penalty, which some say could be as high as 10%, because India is buying Russian oil and Russian armaments. Now, at a time when we are, partners with the United States when it comes to Quad, this is not something that augurs very well, because you're clearly mixing up geopolitics and strategic issues and defense issues with what is essentially a trade or a commerce or a tariff issue. Deepak Reddy.
Very much true. Madhav, before I come to this point, I would like to first look at our domestic politics. You can see the members of the indie ecosystem. Most of them are coming on air, and the comments what they are giving. I mean, they are attacking Modi ji, and they are attacking, they have this sadistic happiness from within. A bad deal is coming for India. I mean, it is shocking, the attitude of these leaders. They should be constructive and give certain suggestions in a positive manner which helps the country's interests. But they're not doing that. All they're doing is attacking Modi ji and then, commenting in a way which is not good for the country. Next point. Rahul Gandhi the other day in the parliament called Trump a liar. I mean, you don't do that in international politics. When Mrs. Gandhi had a bad incident during Nixon's time, how did she handle the issue in a mature manner? I mean, you have to be a little more polished when dealing with issues internationally. And I really request Rahul Gandhi that he should stop meddling with international issues and focus only on domestic politics. Now coming to the Trump's issue, this is art of deal, Madhav. I mean, they throw something and we again counter it. So it's ongoing. I mean, Trump is a businessman before becoming a president. I mean, he tries to put these pressure tactics, and then we stand on our ground and we do what is good for our interests. So this is an ongoing thing, and this is not the end. But one thing what America also needs to understand is India's population is 3.5 times their population, and our per capita is pretty low. So we have certain challenges which we have to focus also. And the government is absolutely strong on our conviction and on our stand, and we haven't given in. We are negotiating, and this is ongoing.
Okay,
so
I want Tehseen to answer that question though. Tehseen, end of the day, what Mr. Rahul Gandhi, it's fine, he's a leader of opposition, he has to put the government to the dock. But that's not how international diplomacy works. At the end of the day, there have been lows during UPA regime also. Did any Indian Prime Minister during the UPA regime or in past Congress regimes, come out and openly abuse the US President? That's not how it works.
Thank you, Madhav, for that question. We are discussing the trade deal gone sour, and Mr. Reddy says Rahul Gandhi's body language, Rahul Gandhi should not meddle in international affairs. So who's meddling? It's your government. When we give you advice, you refuse to take it. When it goes and you say verbatim it's a bad deal, then you blame us for bad vibes. What kind of argument on television? May I answer your question? Has any other Prime Minister or President in the history of this country, and I think Prime Minister Modi did a fabulous job at Operation Sindoor, you know that, humiliated or insulted my country by saying he did the trade deal when our Prime Minister said he did the
PM not answer that when he did the peace deal?
Yes, the PM did it, and I support my Prime Minister. PM answered it. PM gave a scathing reply. But this man continues to lie about my Prime Minister. If somebody is lying about my Prime Minister, I may be in opposition sitting in Times Now, but he is my Prime Minister. मैं उनके साथ Times Now पे लड़ूंगा. But बजा ले कोई बाहर वाला मेरे प्रधानमंत्री को कुछ बोले. I will not allow that. And so, if my Rahul Gandhi, the guy I vote for says that my Prime Minister should not be insulted, he's doing the country a favor. What are you saying? You are saying Rahul Gandhi's body language is the reason why you did a bad deal. Is that your argument on Times Now?
Quick response, Deepak. Quick response, and then we'll move on. Deepak, quick response, please.
Madhav, as usual, they don't seem to understand the nitty-gritties of international politics. I mean, if Trump wants to claim certain credit, it's good. Let him do it. Let him have his own pleasure. So why should we go and counter him every time? And why should an opposition leader, being in a responsible position on the floor of the Indian Parliament, call an American president a liar?
All right.
Is that diplomacy? Is that diplomacy?
Well, is that diplomacy? Who has failed? Is it the government, the opposition? Is it a collective failure of the nation? And whether India's interest is in any way being compromised? We'll only get to know what the final deal is perhaps in coming months once the negotiations are concluded once and for all. But for the moment, certainly a hard position that has been taken by the United States. We will have to see, however, how India responds to it formally in terms of whether India takes any kind of decisive step from here on. Deepak Reddy, Rajat Sethi, Tehseen Poonawala, Advocate Anwar Pawar, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Viewers, it's no secret that 25% tariff is going to pinch India. While the extent of the hit will only be known in some time, experts say that it could cost us a 0.7% drop in GDP. That amounts to a loss of about $30 billion. One of the reasons why Donald Trump has imposed such a high tariff on India is due to our close friendship with Russia. Ever since the Russia-Ukraine war began, India has been importing more and more oil from Moscow. In fact, 35% of the entire oil imports come from Russia, and the government has time and again defended this decision, saying that India will do what's in its best interest. Perhaps that's why Trump has decided to tariff, or rather levy tariffs on EU, UK, Japan and other nations less as compared to India. EU and UK certainly, and not Japan in that category. It's in the same category as India. And perhaps it's the US president's last-ditch arm-twisting tactic to squeeze India. Let's quickly take this across to our guest to discuss more in terms of the international ramifications and how we see things playing out. Sushant Sareen is joining us, Senior Fellow of the ORF. We have Tatiana Kukhareva, who's a senior journalist, joining us from Moscow. Matt Klink, Republican strategist, is joining us. We also have Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, British Army, as well as a former advisor of the Ukraine Ministry of Defense. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Let me start with you first. Matt Klink, you know, what's quite interesting about the manner in which the announcement today has played out is that you have a tariff on trade that's normally announced with other countries. But in the case of India, Trump has decided to link this with other geopolitical, geostrategic issues, talking about how India buys oil and armaments from Russia. Now, that's going to be the logic and the yardstick then India should be taking umbrage to why US is having lunch with the Pakistan Army chief. The logic should work both ways.
Yeah, well, it should, except that we're the world's largest market and everybody wants to trade with us. And President Trump is finally acting like we're the world's largest market. And look, he's been driving hard deals. He drove a hard deal with the EU. We've got a deal with Japan. We've got a deal with UK. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a deal with China before Friday. So Donald Trump is finally acting like America should act. And instead of negotiating bad trade deals that Republican and Democrat administrations have negotiated for decades, he's finally flexing American muscle. And in terms of India dealing, buying oil and military arms from Russia, I mean, look, that you're helping fuel the Putin war machine, and America, of course, is going to react strongly to that. You should buy arms from us. And oil from us, for that matter.
Yeah, and it's not like the rest of the Western world hasn't been buying anything from Russia or even the products that India has been sending. So, Shant, would you like to, refresh the memory of Mr. Klink? Who buys a lot of this oil that actually comes from Russia?
The Americans are buying tons of fertilizer from the Russians. So are they going to impose sanctions upon themselves? The Europeans are buying oil from Russia. Many European countries. Are they going to impose sanctions on them? Trump has tried to impose a lot of tariffs on the Chinese and then backed off and earned that nomenclature of Trump chickens out. Trump always chickens out. So, we've seen that also. So for the Americans to behave that, yes, of course, you are the largest market. But the way you are behaving like a bull in a China shop, you are actually alienating and pushing away most of your friendly countries, most of your friends, your allies, your partners, and while people, because in the short term they might not have any alternatives, might enter into Faustian bargains with the Americans. I don't think the Americans are actually endearing themselves. Most importantly, Madhav, the entire edifice that the United States had created post the Second World War is being systematically dismantled by Donald Trump in just a matter of months. When you start alienating the entire European Union, and it's not a done deal as of now, as far as the EU is concerned. There's a lot of pushback coming from some of the important European countries with important stakes in trade. There is a lot of angst inside Japan. There is a lot of anger in many of the other trading partners. You have managed Canada, for God's sake. So you are dismantling that entire structure. And the fact of the matter remains that for many countries, dealing with the United States was, they saw it a great amount of benefit in it because there was economic benefit and there was political and strategic and diplomatic benefit in having friendly relations with the United States. But if the US is going to behave with this beggar thy neighbor kind of policies in trade and other things, then what is the great incentive of dealing with the US? Yes, maybe temporarily people will, but eventually they'll start looking for other markets and other avenues.
Right. And let me bring in Tatiana on that. Tatiana, the question is this, that will all of this posturing ultimately bring India and Russia closer? Because the entire objective is if it is to force India and US to come together in various areas, trade, defense, so on and so forth, this kind of a hard posturing is certainly not going to help. Tatiana.
Well, I think, Madhav, and thank you for having me. I think that this is actually quite an important step taken by Donald Trump in terms of the global south and its future. He's literally showing, and I've been saying it for quite some time now, that I love Trump for the fact that he is actually very honest. Because every American president has behaved in the way where, America is on one level, and then there's everybody else. But Donald Trump is actually saying it out loud. Mr. Serene has spoken about America alienating friends, but Donald Trump is literally saying we don't have friends, we have America, because friends are on the same level as you are. but we have America, and then we have everybody else, and everybody else is not on the same level. So I do believe that for the countries, for India, for Russia, for the whole of the global South, this right now is a very important call, because if he can do this right now, he can twist anybody's arm. He's saying that I will twist everybody's arm to get my way.
Right. So, Lieutenant Colonel Gren, I want Lieutenant Colonel Grengan to come in on that simple point. Are you at the end of the day pushing the global South countries together? It's all very well to say that we don't want a BRICS currency, so on and so forth. But if you push people over the edge, you very well might see countries coming together and say, look here, we don't want to do business. We'll try and figure out some other alternative avenues.
They're very good. Everybody's making very good points. I have to say this, and somehow you've got to weave your way through the middle of that. And your point about the global South, well, people want to join BRICS as though that is the alternative, but that is such a mixed bunch of good countries and terrorist countries that there is no chance that you can lump the global South with that as an industrial economic group. It's not going to work. So the bottom line is, we come back to the first thing. America is the big market. Europe is the big market. People have still got to trade with them if they actually want to make money. They're not going to make money trading around the rest of the world. Trump knows this. Trump knows this. So I don't think he thinks one iota about pushing the global South away, because if he goes in close to any of the global South countries, most of them will be more than happy to actually deal with him.
Is that indeed the case, Sushant Sareen? And are we going to look at, looking at our options, because we're looking at trade, we're looking at big tech. What about India? And is there anything that India can do to even reciprocate what's happening right now? Because, you sort of saw a lot of hard stances being taken by China in the initial days. They perhaps softened down a bit. What do you think India's strategy is going to be? What are the options before India?
Well, I'm not so sure how much the Chinese have actually softened their stand. And in fact, their reaction today to these sanctions or these penalties that the Trump administration is threatening to impose is pretty clear that they are not going to succumb to those kind of threats. And in the past, we've seen the Americans back off. Now, the point is that I agree that, yes, I said it, America is the largest market. Europe itself is pretty angry with the Americans, with the way Trump is behaving. Now, look, again, I understand that there is some merit in what Trump is talking. He wants to bring trade back. He wants to, do many things which probably in his perception went wrong for the United States. But this is not the way to do it. You are abusive towards countries. You treat everybody. You call them all kinds of names. This is not the way to behave. Okay, number one. That is pure diplomacy. Maybe we don't expect that. And the ugly American concept is back in fashion. But, we were just told, buy the weapons from us. We were buying weapons from you. We had started buying weapons from you. But if you prove yourself to be as unreliable as you have shown yourself to be, and the way you treat your friends and your allies, we are just partners. We are not even your allies right now. The way you treat your friends, your closest friends, your neighbors, and your partners and your allies, quite clearly, it raises very serious questions on whether, when push comes to shove, can anybody even rely upon you? And then there is the whole problem of, yes, in the immediate future, people will try and maybe give in to Trump's tantrums, maybe, accept some of the things which are not going to be in their self-interest. But remember one thing, what Trump is doing is effectively driving a big hole through the entire international trading system, the entire multilateral trading system, and breaking it down. The multilateral system which had, and then when the Americans talk about a rules-based order, that everybody must follow rules.
Absolutely.
Yes, everybody follow rules. The Americans should not follow rules. How does that work? For God's sake.
Mackling, let me bring in Mackling. Mackling, I think the point is this, that yes, India has been buying the military hardware the US has wanted to for the last decade and a half, but there is a history. There is over 50% of our army that relies on Russian parts and spares and what have you. So it's not going to change miraculously overnight, however much Trump wants to wish it away or wants India to completely buy only US military hardware. That's not going to happen. And at the end of the day, let's come back to the point I was making earlier. US also supplies the same hardware to Pakistan. And if you're not going to be reliable in this manner, then why should India trust you in the first place? Mackling.
Well, yeah, you don't have to believe me. You can take the words of your prime minister about the reliance that India has on America and the good relationship. And look, in terms of the trade deal that was announced today at 25%, that could still change. And I think that, look, a lot of this ultimately boils down to you still have barriers to trade for American companies to get in and trade with India. You want the 25% rate to go lower? Get rid of those barriers. That's the reason. Those are the deals that Donald Trump is saying. And as for the quote unquote the world's-based trade economy, look, it's been perverted over 80 years since World War II. America is the world's largest market, and we're running a trade deficit with countries all over the world, including a pretty substantial one with India. Donald Trump's not going to tolerate that anymore. We're not going to be a part of a system
but
that doesn't work for America.
There are many arguments that I have, and I'm very tempted to answer each one of those points one by one. But on the point that you made right at the outset, that we should believe our Prime Minister more than anyone else, you know what the Prime Minister said in the Indian Parliament just yesterday, Mr. Klink? He said that Donald Trump's 29-time assertion, just hear me out. He said that Donald Trump's 29-term assertion that he coerced India and Pakistan into stop the war because he threatened to withdraw the trade deals is what led to peace is completely wrong. The Prime Minister said there was no external pressure. So would you then believe the Indian Prime Minister or President Trump?
And that is a statement that is clearly made for domestic consumption. And look, that's probably what he believes. And yet the war did
The same applies to Trump. The same, what applies to the goose applies to the gander.
Well, you don't have to take Trump at his word. Just look at his actions. And look, if India doesn't like the deal, then figure something else out.
That's the quickest turnaround I've seen. Little quicker than President Trump even.
figure something else out. You need us more than we need you.
All right. Oh, really? Sushant, you need us more than we need you.
This is precisely the kind of arrogance, and obnoxiousness that we get from the Americans that irritates the hell out of anybody with a bone of pride in him. Like I said, the ugly American is back in action, and very clearly it's visible on your show. But other than that, the problem with these guys is they're only looking at merchandise trade. What about services trade? When you start adding the services trade to the merchandise trade, the trade between India and the United States is virtually balanced. Now, unless it's the case that you want to go into a barter system where for every $1 that I buy from the Americans will buy $1 from me, then yes, by all means, demolish the entire international trading system and demolish the entire modern global economy and go back to the barter trade. If that's Trump's understanding of how trade works, and how modern economics works, how globalization works, yeah, by all means, go ahead, be my guest. And Mr. Clint, for all I care, can start setting up Nike shoe manufacturing plants and paying the kind of American wages that are there for making Nike shoes. Otherwise, if you want to shift manufacturing back to the United States for many of these products, it will be done by robos. It's still not going to get the Americans the kind of jobs which they had maybe 40 years back. The world has moved on. America has moved on. America has moved into a lot of the service sector, a lot of other stuff, which they make fabulous stuff, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, Mr. Klink, that the world's biggest market, incidentally, if you want to sell shoes, microwaves, cars, so on and so forth, you'll have to be as competitive as some of the other countries in the world. But let me bring in Tatiana. And Tatiana, quick response to what Mr. Klink was saying.
Oh, this is just, it is beautiful. I completely agree with Sushant Sareen. This is the epitome of American arrogance in action, which, we expect from the Republican Party and we expect from Donald Trump personally. However, You know, this, again, opens a lot of opportunities in my view. I think that this statement alone opens a lot of opportunities for the countries to see. You know, that was the same thing that happened when he imposed the sanctions on Russian oil to begin with. You know, a lot of other countries, including Saudi Arabia, including all of the Gulf states, just understood when America imposed those sanctions, you know, it showed the world what it can do. You know, one day we don't need Russian oil, the next day we're going to cancel somebody else if you don't stand up to us.
Absolutely.
So
there has to be some amount of stability when it comes to foreign policy. I'm sorry I'm completely out of time and interrupting you there, Tatiana. I'd like to thank all our panelists, Sushant Sareen, Tatiana Kukreva, Matt Klink and Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.